You're watching Retirement Talk with Eric Kearney, Southwest Florida's retirement television. He's an author, a radio host, a fiduciary, and Southwest Florida's premier investment advisor. Here is Senior Investment Advisor Eric Kearney.
Hey there, Florida. Welcome back once again to Retirement Talk with Eric Kearney and Joseph Lanza, Retirement Wealth Advisors. Right here in South Florida, I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Fellas, looks like we all went to the blue area of the rack in the shopping department, but good to see you guys. How you doing this week?
Very good.
Awesome, awesome. So we've talked about this over the last few weeks. We've been talking about it. It usually ends up on the bottom of our screen. We talk about the personal financial blueprint. Right. I would like to talk a little bit about it, but we're going to talk about it with the backdrop, not just of our lovely beach here over in Fort Myers, but the backdrop of real client case scenarios that you help people with. Right. I honestly think that's why folks tune into a show like this. Mm-hmm. So we can go through the education, but nobody necessarily wants to hear a lecture on investments, standard deviation, alpha, beta, all that.
Right.
How you help people. So can we talk about the financial blueprint and actual client case studies today?
Sure. So over this past year, after 2022 and the debacle in the market, you found a lot of financial advisors who had dropped the ball in their portfolios. So we've had a lot of new clients coming in. They're like, I don't know if you do anything differently, Eric, but my portfolio's a mess and it has not recovered. And so what we're doing is we're doing a personal financial blueprint. And what we're doing is we're importing their entire portfolio in here, Spike. And what we're doing is we're doing it for two different reasons. First of all, we want to understand what's out there. We want to understand what our portfolios look like to this. But then second of all, we want to get that client reacquainted with their portfolio. Here's what's working. Here's what's not working. And what we're seeing is there were a lot of interest rate sensitive investments that were still kept in the portfolio in 2022. My question is, how could that be? We all knew that interest rates eventually were going to go up. So why would you have such a toxic asset inside that portfolio? So I think the one thing is that when somebody comes in, and we'll talk about one of my clients in a minute, but when they come in, now all of a sudden they're getting more educated about their current portfolio. And it's very important to do that because you have to understand where you are in order to understand where you're going. And so we did have a client that sold their business up in the Northeast. They never had this much money. All they did was work, work, work. And they said, I never expected to be in such a good position. So now all of a sudden, they turn their money over to a national firm. They take over the money. No financial plan, no tax planning, no income planning, no nothing. Just a portfolio. And so they put it in. 2002 comes along. They didn't hedge for anything. And they ended up losing a great deal of money. So then they come into us and they're like, well, I don't know if you can do anything because people think you're the same as they are.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the financial industry. That's my frustration. Not everybody is the same. It's just like the quality of contractors. You know, you have not so good contractors, and then you have contractors that build the most beautiful things. You just have to find the right contractor. It's the same in the advisory field. Yeah. And that's why we always say you need to find 3 different advisors and really sit down with each one of them. Yeah.
And here's the thing is that we want you to go out, we want you to look for different information. We're going to help you with the portfolio management, the estate planning, taxes, healthcare choices, Social Security. Your work is the beforehand, doing your due diligence and doing a comparison. And that's what we say, look, compare us to other people. I think I know which firm you're talking about. It's usually that commercial that starts with, if you have $500,000 more of investable assets, you need a retirement plan. Really? Well, what about the people beforehand? What about when I'm in my planning stages? What about if I have well more than that?
Right.
It's offsetting to me. I don't like seeing that commercial there.
Well, and here's the frustrating part about it. I mean, they're only being offered, and I know I said this earlier, but I want to reiterate it, they're only being offered a portfolio. There's no other kind of planning going in there whatsoever. So when you're worried about inflation, they're not factoring that in. If you're worried about taxes or required minimum distributions or Roth conversions or how much is health care or long-term care going to be down the road, there's no answers to any of that. So believe me, just having a portfolio is one 1/10 of your overall financial plan.
In fact, the more I sit down and talk with you guys, because we've talked a lot about lifestyle and behavioral finance, 1%, that's kind of what makes sense, because you're usually finding, what do we want to do in a retirement? Did we just move down to Florida? Do we have other family members we're going to visit around the country, or do you want to travel? And it's usually meeting 2, maybe 3 that you actually start talking about the portfolio itself and what it's going to do for you.
But the funny thing is that that's what drives people in the most, though, is the portfolio. If they're working with a current advisor, they're trying to manage it themselves. The portfolio is kind of what sparks that fire to say, oh, something's not right here. And then once they come in and sit down with us, they kind of notice how we put that portfolio to the side and say, well, we have to make a financial plan for you first, because we don't even know what your portfolio is going to look like until we finish crafting that financial plan for you. Right. But we have to figure out what your money is truly meant to do before we can find a proper vehicle for it to get you through that road.
Yeah, it's kind of like going into a doctor's office and you say, you know, I just don't know if I feel right, and they write you a prescription right away. You're like, wait a minute, you didn't check, you didn't ask me what's wrong, you didn't ask me what I want to do or what my lifestyle is. And so for you, it starts with lifestyle.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what people are driving towards. And a lot of people say, look, I'm kind of intimidated by money, but I'm not intimidated by my lifestyle. And that's the whole thing. So we have become accustomed to a lifestyle. We do not want to lose that. And you know, when you bring up health, it's really interesting. When you go into your doctor, you want blood tests, you want blood work, you want them to run different things. You want a very thorough analysis of your health. You want something that you can understand. So when the doctor comes back, he's like, here's your triglycerides. Oh, Eric, you need to lose weight. I've been hearing that for 20 years. You know, like, yeah. So what about all this other stuff, right? But what they're doing is they're really explaining it. Now, when you go into the financial world, people are like, well, I just want to make more money, right? How simple is that? So why do we want such a thorough analysis of our health, but yet not so much on our wealth? We're actually able to accept somebody just giving us a portfolio. That's not good. There's so much more that you need. There's so much there that an advisor should be offering out there, and we're seeing that it's just not being offered. It's not right. That's my frustration with the financial industry.
Right. And I think a lot of people out there have a fear of, okay, well, they're financial advisors. There's going to be a huge cost to this. There's going to be something that they're going to want to pitch right up front. Folks, what I want to tell you, there are firms like that out there. There are people who run their businesses in different styles. The way that we do things here is we need to get to know you first. What are you trying to do? What do you want to do in retirement? Do you want to travel? Do you want to make sure that you don't run out of money in retirement? Most important, what's on your mind the most? That's what we want to find out first. Then we can see if there's anything we can do to help you and make you have that lifestyle that you've always wanted to in a retirement. It starts right here with a phone call. Set up an appointment. This phone call here is going to go to a secure call center, and then we will schedule an appointment for you to come in the offices right down here in South Florida. 800-779-1942. We'll get you started on your own personal financial blueprint. It's tailored, it's comprehensive. We'll explain more about what it is when we come back right after this.
What does your retirement look like? Is it filled with travel, spending time with family, uninterrupted rounds at the golf course? Or are you too worried to even think about your hopes and dreams? Eric and his team can answer your questions with a complimentary review of your retirement and income plan, and it all starts with getting to know you. They'll do exactly that by going over your current strategy to expose the weaknesses that may exist in your retirement portfolio. Plus, they'll explain potential risks and possible strategies to you in easy-to-understand terms and help get you reacquainted with your portfolio and income strategy. Once they understand your retirement goals, objectives, and dreams, they'll work to custom build a retirement plan to help ensure that you cannot outlive your income in retirement. Because every dream needs a plan. Call Eric today and schedule your visit. You only retire once, so let's get it right the first time.
Today, we are talking about your personal financial blueprint with Eric and Joseph of Retirement Wealth Advisors right here in South Florida. I want you to know that we're right here in the area. And I know, Joseph, you probably get folks who come in with this as well. We're talking about that portfolio selection, about when they just want to compare the numbers. The first thing, they sit down, sit in the chair, look, before you get started, before you pitch me anything, what kind of returns do you get? What kind of returns can I achieve with my portfolio? You get the number person?
Yeah, all the time, right? And that's people that hyper-focus on something that I can't even answer before we go through that discovery, before you get to know somebody. It all depends on what you're really trying to achieve in retirement. What's your risk tolerance as well? But when we really start to break down that portfolio blueprint and we start to analyze somebody's current investment positions, we do want to look at their past rates of return, and we do want to compare those apples to apples for the underlying indexes. Because I think a trend that we've seen happening over the past 10 years is we've seen a large bull run in the market, and people are satisfied with the rates of return they're getting, but a lot of them have never done a comparison to see what the underlying indexes are actually returning. So you can have somebody come in the office who has a 5% rate of return over the past 10 years, let's say, and they're like, well, I'm succeeding in my own mind that this is good. Then I show them a comparison of, well, the markets you're tied to have done 10% over the past 10 years. And that person's not very happy anymore after they hear that, right? So we want to make sure that the portfolio is relevant enough to actually appreciate the upticks in the market. Because if the past 10 years have been fantastic for the market, well, if the next 10 years are even just average, what is your portfolio going to look like then? Does it have enough relevancy to power its way through that?
This is opening up a whole can of worms. But you're also talking about comparing the returns, but what about comparing the fees? What about are you still using mutual funds, which have seemingly 90% higher fees, generally speaking, over things like ETFs? Are they being actively managed? And another thing on the comparing the returns, when you talk about this bull run, let's just say this real quick, a lot of times for people who are looking back at the last 20 years, if you were working, you were also getting your match from your employer, and you're saying, even when it goes down, it doesn't go down that much. You're also getting free money in there. So fees, returns, you got to compare apples to apples. How do you do that?
Yeah, and that's very difficult for a lot of people to understand, right? We've talked about in many shows, people are, I just want the bottom line, Eric. There's no bottom line in the financial industry. And you're right, you have to break down fees, and you have to take a look at mutual funds and the internal fees in there. And believe me, this is what we're saying is that a lot of people have these incredibly outdated portfolios. You remember the bag phone that people used to have, right? That was a great phone in its day. You could make a phone call, but that was pretty much it. Now all of a sudden, look at the cell phone, what it can do today. So the difference between the bag phone and your cell phone today are two completely different things. Your portfolio has to do the same thing. It has to evolve. It has to be relevant. And what we're trying to do is get you reacquainted with your portfolio so that you understand what's going on, and also that you understand your holdings. How can you reduce your fees? How can you lower your volatility? How can you get a better, smoother rate of return? The bottom line is that we are trying to give people what they actually need, but you have to evolve over time. And there's not enough people out there that are evolving with their retirement.
Right. And sometimes folks will say, well, I don't want to change that portfolio again because it's done well, and maybe they don't realize that they were getting those matches, and we were in the midst of the longest bull run in American history. But now the music has stopped.
Right.
We had 2020, 2022 with interest rates and so forth, and now people are seeing that pain in their portfolios. Joseph, is there anything we can do to recover what some folks may have lost before having a financial plan from the last couple of years? Can we get that back?
Yeah, there's always going to be opportunity out there, even when the market is moving forward. Even when we have down years, there's still going to be opportunity. And realistically talking, if we look back to 2020 with the coronavirus, some of the best opportunity was during that downward market, by having that active management. Right? You're actually appreciating that. I mean, the market ended up doing 18.5% in 2020. That's not a bad year. But you have to be making sure that you're understanding your volatility and the actual risk that you're taking in your portfolio on an ongoing basis, which means you're not just setting it up saying, I know I'm taking this much risk with this portfolio, and you never look at that portfolio again, or you're never running reports on your risk again. That's something that us as money managers, we do on a constant basis. We constantly understand the amount of risk that we're putting our clients in, or even the volatility that's tied to those portfolios.
Yeah. Eric, let me ask you this, because when you opened up, you were talking about one of those big box corporate firms that just kind of puts people into cookie cutter solutions or their own solutions that organization developed.
Right.
So we've talked a lot about portfolio management. Talk to me about the rest of the retirement blueprint.
Right.
The value. What else are people getting with your version of the retirement blueprint?
So after we do the personal financial blueprint, then what we're doing is we're offering them an income plan. And what this is it's actually laying out all of their different income streams that they have coming in, whether it's a pension, their Social Security. We're giving them ideas, options, and different alternatives that they may have not have thought of before. And then what we're doing is we're putting in any kind of brokerage account in there, 403b, 401k, and so forth. But then what we're also doing is we're laying out the required minimum distributions. We're throwing in taxes. We're throwing in inflation. We're also throwing in healthcare and long-term care. And a lot of these other firms are not doing this. The reason that I know that is everybody says, I've never seen anything like this, Eric. That's what I want to hear. That's when I know that we're doing something right. That's when I know that we're doing something a lot of other firms are not even offering. And so there's a lot of value with our firm. And that's really what we're offering people. The thing is, we want to get you reacquainted with your portfolio. I want to reframe your retirement. I want you to look at it differently. I want you to get excited about it. And this is the one thing, is that everybody on our team is so passionate about what we do. Donna Crone, I had to drive 3 hours one day to see, we drove up to Spring Hill to see a client. Donna talked about financial planning for 3 hours on the way up. We met with a client, talked about financial planning, left there, had lunch, and then drove home for 3 hours, and we talked about financial planning. And I was like, you know, I mean, I love it, but my gosh, Donna really loves financial planning, so.
Exactly. So many different things in there. But it's nice to know that you've got it at one resource and you're working together. And we've said this, maybe you've already turned on your Social Security, but the Social Security office isn't there to give you financial planning advice. Right. All those Medicare commercials with phone numbers during open enrollment season, they're not asking you about the rest of your financial plan. Right. They're not asking you about, do you have an estate plan? Those washed up actors that you talked about who are teaching about gold or reverse mortgages, they're not saying you need to do a comprehensive, they're all pitching products. And the difference is when you're talking to folks, it's what's on your mind? What's keeping you up? What other elements do we need to take a part of? So do you do that entire blueprint for all of the clients that come in?
Yeah, anybody that calls into the show or even comes into our office, it's something that we offer completely complimentary alongside with that income plan. And Eric can attest for this too, but the amount of times that we've gone through that second meeting with somebody and went through that blueprint with them and that income plan, and they've sat back and said, I've been with my current advisor for how many years, and I've never been shown something like this before. And they're getting it on the second meeting with us. And it's just a taste of what it's like to be a part of our firm and work with us. And that's what we want clients to know. And we talked about it before, but when we're telling people, you know, make sure you're sitting down with other advisors to make sure we're the right fit for you. A lot of times I'll tell that to people, and they'll kind of look at me like, you know, have a third eye. And I'll say, well, I'm not worried about taking you on as a client. I'm worried about making sure you're comfortable with where you're at. And we're not afraid to tell people that. We want people to be 100% comfortable in retirement. We're not here to put people in situations to make them feel uncomfortable just so we can take them on as a client.
In fact, it's a relationship. I mean, this is not a transaction. This is something, so that's actually part of the process for you. And I know that you want to help out anyone you can, but you've actually looked across the desk from some folks and said, I don't know if we're going to be a good fit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when Joseph has been with our firm for a very long time. He's a smart one. I've got a few funny jokes. That's how it goes. Okay. But you know, when you sit down with somebody and you're talking with them, you know, I want to understand what they're trying to accomplish. And sometimes the ideas that they have or their lifestyle that they're living really is not a good fit for us. And there's got to be a very nice way to say, look, I don't think that we're a good fit. And here's what's happening and the reason why. When you work with an investment advisor and you sign on with them, you are now entering into a financial relationship with them, right? And so there's a lot of people that say, Eric, I know I have to leave my current advisor. It's like divorcing them. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who are more loyal to their advisor because they've been with them for so long than they are to their own money. That's not a good place to be. So there's a lot of times where I say, look, you know, you're dedicated to that advisor. They're not doing a great job for you. They're not writing the income plan, but I would just stay with them. I leave that meeting disappointed. And it's not because I didn't take on that client. Bringing on that client is not going to change my life, but I know more than likely I could have significantly changed their life. Yeah. So on the way home, that's the client that I think about. Maybe I met with 3 of my very successful clients that day. We did planning. They're in great condition. I never even think about them until the next meeting. I think about the one that we could have helped.
And we do that in life, and it's proven time and time again. The negativity bias, we're more apt to ruminate over things that are negative than those 3 great people that you help that are living their retirement lives.
Right.
You go home with I wish I could have helped them. So folks, here's what we want to say to you. There's no cost to get a second opinion. You do this if you are going and talking to a doctor and they say that you should have a surgery. The doctor will even say, if you want to, go get a second opinion, go get a third opinion. You need to work with someone who makes sense to you, who has a plan for you, and that you two can communicate with one another. So if you've never had a second opinion on your investment strategy, maybe you don't have a financial advisor because you're just using those retirement accounts at work, or you do have an advisor and you're not sure if the income strategy is working, call us, make an appointment. This phone number here is going to go to a secure call center. We will schedule an appointment, and there's no cost to come in for a second opinion. We're not going to call your advisor and say, hey, by the way, did you know that Bob and Betty came in? Don't worry. This is a second opinion, and it's no cost to you. More Retirement Talk with Eric and Joseph right after this.
Retirement Wealth Advisors with Eric Kearney.
Are you overwhelmed by recessions, elections, and corrections? Believe me, I get it. And on top of that, who's more frustrated with the financial industry, me or you? If you're in a financial no man's land, give us a call today. Let's get that conversation started.
Retirement Wealth Advisors.
What does your retirement look like? Is it filled with travel, spending time with family, or are you too worried to even think about your hopes and dreams? Eric and his team can answer your questions with a complimentary review of your retirement and income plan, and it all starts with getting to know you. Because every dream needs a plan. Call Eric today and schedule your visit. You only retire once, so let's get it right the first time.
Welcome back, Florida, to Retirement Talk with Eric Kearney and Joseph Lanza of Retirement Wealth Advisors. I'm your host, Spike Spangle, and we're talking about what is exactly that retirement blueprint. How do we put it together? It's more than just an investment strategy. It's about value and what kinds of things we can talk about. But I need to be the viewer out there. I need to be the person sitting on the couch. I got to ask you about fees. There's got to be a cost to that. You say your complimentary review, that the retirement blueprint is no cost to the folks who call in, but there has to be fees somewhere. Explain this to me.
Well, I mean, there's only fees if you end up deciding working with us, right? And we only charge assets under management. But when we start talking about fees, within that portfolio blueprint, there's going to be a fee report that a lot of people have never seen before, because there's a lot of hidden fees in retirement planning that people don't understand, especially if you're using mutual funds. They're going to charge internal expense ratios. And a lot of times that's not advertised to you by the advisor that puts you in that, or it's not in your statements transaction tab like you would see maybe your advisor's fee, which also means this is on top of your advisor's fee. So a lot of times people say like, oh, they're double dipping in my account. Yeah, there are 2 different fees that are coming out, one you're not even seeing. And more recently, we've been seeing with especially bond funds, bond mutual funds, we can take a look at what that internal fee is compared to their actual rate of return. And over the 3 and 5 year periods, a lot of those bond fund fees have been higher than the actual rate of returns over that 3 and 5 year period, which makes us sit back and ask the client, okay, well, who's made more money now over this period of time? You or that actual fund manager? And it's very eye-opening to people to see that.
Yeah. And I will also, though, defend that in saying that those funds have been put together. They're managed together, you know, because we could go back to the 80s where if you wanted to buy a stock or a bond, you had to call a stock broker and they would sell those to you. So they're put together in these funds. But there is a way to compare even those management fees of those funds, right? So do you do that kind of analysis? We brushed a little bit on mutual funds, exchange-traded funds. I don't know. I just don't understand. Why would anybody still be using a mutual fund if there's the same kind of fund that's done as an ETF that's much less expensive?
Yeah, I don't really understand either, other than, and I asked nicely, is your advisor a veteran advisor, right? And maybe they've been around for a long time and they're just not evolving. And here's the biggest problem. The markets are changing constantly. The world economies are changing. You've got recessions, elections, corrections. You've got interest rate changes. You have all kinds of inflation that's all over the place. So while economic events are changing, why isn't your portfolio? Why isn't your portfolio being managed around all the events that are going on? Instead, you're just in heavy loaded retail mutual funds. It's a set it and forget it portfolio, and you're just hoping that it's going to be okay. Hope is not a strategy. And so what we're doing is that we're actually managing according to what's going on in the world. And I think what people want, Spike, is transparency. They want full transparency. I want to understand. I have a lot of friends, and we've been friends for a very long time, and they tell me, I don't have a lot of money, Eric. I'm overwhelmed. I don't understand. I'm afraid to talk to somebody. I'm afraid they're going to tell me I don't have anywhere near enough money. What you have to do is you have to have respect for everyone that has money out there. We've crimped, we've sacrificed, we've saved a lot of money. Now, all of a sudden, we want to respect where that money came from and try to do the very best that we can for you. It's hard.
Yeah.
And again, it's emotional, it's overwhelming. People put it off, they procrastinate. Pick up the phone and call us. Let's see if we can turn your financial situation around. This is what we do. And there's nothing more exciting for me than to turn someone's situation around and say, look, it looks like you're going to be okay. It's going to take a lot of work and it's not easy, but let's put the effort in. Let's show you what's going on with that. Let's do a personal financial blueprint. Let's do a preliminary income plan, and let's see where it takes you. Let's see where that leads you.
What I've always liked about talking to you guys about talking and putting these plans together in the blueprint is that you work with the assets that people have. And when we go to the very beginning of this program, you don't say, call me if you have this number.
Right.
You just say, call me.
Right.
And let us see if we can help you. Let's work with your situation. Let's work with you and your spouse and try to design the retirement that you've always wanted to with what you have. It's not about you've got to have this level first. And so when people come in for the first, are they surprised, refreshed that you're not asking about those account numbers first?
Yeah, actually sometimes we'll go through an income plan with somebody. Maybe it's somebody that we don't see eye to eye with, or somebody that we think that they're doing great on their own right now, and we'll go through that whole income plan with them. And we'll sit back and say, okay, yep, here's your income plan. Everything looks good. You're achieving all your goals. You're managing your risk properly, etc. And they'll say, okay, well, where do we go from here? And well, you're doing good. Keep doing what you're doing. And they say, well, what do we owe you? And they're kind of like, scared almost, like, well, what do we owe you now? Is there a catch? And no, we're not lying when we say it's complimentary income plan and portfolio review. So really, no matter what situation you're in, you have nothing to lose to really give us a call.
Right. Eric, tell us again, the retirement blueprint, everything they're going to get into that. We're closing out the show here, not a lot
Give
of time.
us a call today. Let's do your personal financial blueprint. Let's get you reacquainted with your portfolio. Let's take a look at the risk, the fees, your asset classes, diversification or duplication. Again, let's give you a second opinion on that portfolio. Let's get you that income plan. Let's see where it takes you. Let's see where it leads you. We look forward to meeting you. Give us a call right now.
The phone number down here on the bottom of the screen. You can also use the QR code. Open up your phone to the camera function and point it at that box right underneath my hand there. When you click on it, it's going to take you over to the landing site. You can schedule an appointment there. Thank you so much for watching Retirement Talk. Get your own no-cost financial blueprint.
Hey, Southwest Florida, thank you so much for watching today's show. If anything's resonated with you today, or you're really looking for that second opinion, give us a call today. If you're serious about your finances, we're serious about working with you.
Remember, you only retire once, so let's get it right the first time. Have a great week and an even better retirement.